the article, Miriam. I wasn't able to read the whole thing because you have to be a subscriber or something.
Oh, really? Well, maybe I'm not a subscriber, but I'll try to print it out and just give it to you.
Yeah, I would love to see it. Okay. All right, so let's go live. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. For those of you who would like a copy of the text, if you don't have a copy, there's chapter 3, section 1. And here's just a handout. For those of you who are watching in Facebook land, if you go to the group Shiur in Moreh Nevukhim, you will find a JPEG file that you can easily download and just have the handout. Now, to get our bearings, to remind ourselves what the Rambam's objective is, if you remember from the Hakdama, from the introduction, he had said that my objective is to define certain terminologies that appear in the Tanakh to help us better understand what Hashem was communicating to us in the Torah. Certainly the first part is dedicated to removing any sense of corporeality or physical nature to the divine. And that's what we've seen in the first two chapters. Chapter 3 is a continuation of this objective of any time the Rambam says that we encounter terminology in the Torah that seems to attribute some kind of physical feature to the Ribono Shel Olam, we have to carefully redefine what we mean. And here we're going to be talking about the way people apprehend or intellectually cognize God. Because if people were to be able to see some kind of physical form to the Ribono Shel Olam, that would also be problematic. And so therefore, in chapter 3 and the following chapter, chapter 4, the Rambam is going to address that particular issue. So, we talked about before the idea of man being created in God's image. And an image, we meant that it means that man possesses an intellect, not that man possesses any physical similarity to the Ribono Shel Olam. So chapter 3 now says, let's define two other terms that we find in the Torah that are Tavnit and Temunah. Those are two words that are sometimes used interchangeably, but, says the Rambam, we're only going to find the word Temunah in reference to God, but we will never find the word Tavnit in reference to God. So this is what he's setting out to do, because the word Tavnit, as we'll see in just a minute, implies some kind of physical feature, and the word Temunah is ambiguous. Sometimes it can imply a physical feature, and sometimes it can imply something much deeper. So we go to the text. It is thought that in the Hebrew language, the meanings of the words Temunah and Tavnit, which Pines translates as figure and shape, are identical. This is not the case. For Tavnis is a term deriving from the word bana, and it signifies the build and aspect of a thing. I mean to say its shape. For instance, it's being a square, a circle, a triangle, or some other shape. And so essentially what the word Tavnis means, it is descriptive of an external physical feature that describes the shape, the form of an object. So that's what the word Tavnis means. Accordingly, it says the shape of the tabernacle and the shape of all of its vessels, the Tavnit kol kelav, and the Tavnit of all of the vessels. Here the Torah wants to tell you that when the Jewish people constructed the Mishkan and all of its vessels, they all conformed to a specific shape and size. And it says, according to the shape that was shown upon the mountain. Again, referring to Ketavnitam asher atam moreh bahar, the shape of the way things were supposed to be built, you were shown on the mountain. Okay? Meaning that all of the instruments of the Mishkan, all of the accoutrements, all of the structure, all of the beams, all of the utensils. You were shown that on the mountain at Har Sinai. The shape of any bird, the shape of a hand, the shape of the porch, all of these words, all of these psukim contain the word Tavnit. In all these passages, the word means shape, the physical shape. For the reason the Hebrew language does not use this word with reference to attributes that apply in any way to the deity. You will never find the word Tavnit in reference to the Ribono Shel Olam. Now, here is where we get into the confusion between the word Tavnit and Temunah. So before we get to this next paragraph, the last paragraph of the chapter, take a look at the psukim in source number 1. This is from Parshas Va'et Chanan in Sefer Devarim in the book of Deuteronomy. And here the Torah says, V'nishmartem ma'od lenafshotechem. You need to be very careful for your souls. And here the Torah is saying, you know why you need to be careful for your souls? Because idolatry is a very seductive practice. Because you may be tempted to worship idols in the same way that the other nations do, and in the way that you were raised when you were growing up in Egypt. Ki lo ri'item kol temunah biyom diber Hashem aleichem b'chorev mitoch ha'esh. But note that you did not see any temunah. Here the word is not tavnit, but rather it is the word temunah. You did not see any temunah on the day that God spoke to you from within the fire. Now here the word, we're not sure what the word temunah means yet. But you'll see that the word temunah and tavnit seem to be used interchangeably in this whole passage. You look at the next pasuk, pasuk Tet Zayin, Pentashchitun va'asisem lachem pesel temunat kol samel tavnit zachar o nekeva. Maybe you'll become corrupt and you'll make for yourselves a graven image, which is a temunah of any samel. A sculptured image in any likeness. Tavnit zachar o nekeva, the tavnit of a male or female. So the word temunah, of any likeness, kol samel, and then tavnit zachar o nekeva, the shape or the form of a male or female. Tavnit kol behema asher ba'aretz, tavnit kol tzipor kanaf asher ta'uf b'shamayim, the form or the shape of any animal or of any bird that will fly in the heavens. Tavnit kol romes ba'adama, the tavnit of anything that creeps on the ground. Tavnit kol daga asher b'mayim mitachas la'aretz. So you find that the word tavnit is used primarily, but the word temunah also crept in there. So it's not clear what the difference between the two of them is. And here's where the Rambam says we have to appreciate that, like he said in the very introduction of the Moreh, that there are some words that appear in Hebrew that have multiple uses depending upon the context. What Pines translates as amphibolous, which is a very unusual word, so we're trying to avoid that word. As for the term figure or temunah, it is used amphibolously or ambiguously or in multiple ways, in 3 different senses. This word can be used 3 different ways. It is used to designate the form of a thing outside the mind that is apprehended by the senses. I mean the shape and configuration of the thing. So the first way that temunah is used is the same way that we would use the word tavnit. In this sense, tavnit and temunah can be used interchangeably because just like tavnit refers to the physical shape of something that I see with my eyes, so too the word temunah is something that I see with my eyes, and I try to, in the context of idolatry, I try to replicate the temunah, that which I have seen with my eyes. That's one way that it can be used. Thus it says, and make you a graven image, the figure of any, and so on. For ye saw no figure. What we just read in Sefer Devarim, you never saw a temunah. You never saw God assuming a physical form or shape. That's the word temunah. Okay, good. It is also, now here's the second use. It is also used to designate the imaginary form of an individual object existing in the imagination after the object of which it is the form is no longer manifest to the senses. Now, I just have to sort of just, as an aside, the Rambam speaks in very Aristotelian ways, in the way that he describes epistemology, the way that the mind works. And the way that the mind works is that it contains images within a certain faculty within the mind, which Greek philosophy or medieval philosophy calls the imagination faculty. Right? There's different faculties within the mind. So there's a faculty of imagination. And the faculty of imagination is something that we'll discuss more as we go further into medieval philosophy of the Rambam and others. But the idea here is that your mind can conjure images of things that it has already sensed in the outside world, and it creates those images and puts them in the mind. The reason why we can conceive of certain things that we have never seen before is because we take combinations of different things. Like I can imagine a dragon, even though I've never seen a dragon.
Never watched Harry Potter?
Well, okay, besides that, is CGI. But why can the makers of Harry Potter imagine a dragon? Because they know what a big reptile looks like, and they know what wings look like, so they just, like bat wings. So they take bat wings, and they combine that with the body of a big reptile, and you get a dragon. And that's the idea behind how the imagination can conjure certain images, but those images exist not in reality, but they exist in the mind. That's the terminology, okay? So the word Tavnit can also be used in this second way to describe an image that is not in the real world or the outside world, but rather in the world of the mind, but does not exist in the real world. And the example for this is, thus it says, in thoughts from the visions of the night and so on. The conclusion of the dictum being, it stood still, but I could not discern the appearance thereof. A figure, a Temunah, was before my eyes. What we're talking about in this passage is a passage from the 4th chapter of the book of Job, of Eov. And here, I believe it's Eliphaz, is responding to Eov's complaints about all of his suffering. And he was telling him that I had a dream in the middle of the night. And in my dream, I imagined a certain image. And that image was the image of an angel. That's really what he's describing. And the angel is telling him a message that a mortal can never be acquitted by God. A man cannot be cleared by his maker. And the point is that what Eov's friend was trying to impart to him is that I saw an image of an angel communicating this divine knowledge to me. But there too, the word Temunah in Pasuk Tes Zayin in chapter 4 of Job, it says, Ya'amod v'lo akir mar'ehu. It was there right in front of me, but I could not recognize what it really was. Temunah l'neged einai. It was a form in front of me. It wasn't a physical form. I wasn't awake, but this was in my mind. And so therefore, the second usage of the word Temunah is something that we conjure in our mind. And finally...
But it's still an image.
It's still an image, right. It's something that takes physical form in your mind. It has a physical visage in your mind.
Does that mean if somebody was born blind that they could never have that kind of an image?
It seems that way, at least from this philosophical perspective, that you can only imagine in your imagination faculty things that you have seen or combinations of things that you have seen in the real world. It certainly seems that way. Okay, but now, so therefore, Eov's friend means a phantasm of the imagination that is before my eyes while in sleep. The term is also used to designate the true notion grasped by the intellect. And now we get to the third. And this, just to address your issue, Miriam, the third word, Temunah, can be referenced by a blind person as well, because it refers to the grasping not of a physical visage or form or shape, but rather the true nature of the thing that is being imagined or cognized. Okay? It is with a view to this third meaning that the word Temunah is used with reference to God, may he be exalted. Thus it says, Usemunas Hashem Yabit, referring to Moshe Rabbeinu, that he saw the Temunah of Hashem. So the word Temunah should not be mistaken for the other terms of Temunah, which is making out the physical form of God, because God has no physical form. But rather here, when the word Temunah is used, it's referring to the true essence of God. The meaning and interpretation of this verse are, he's grasped the truth of God. End of chapter. Very short chapter. Okay, but now we just need to unpack just one or two final things. First of all, in what reference is this pasuk stated, U'temunat Hashem yabit, that Moshe Rabbeinu sees the Temunah of God? This is where, if you remember, God is rebuking Aaron and Miriam for their speaking disparagingly of their brother. And what Hashem was trying to communicate to Miriam and Aaron is that you don't understand Moshe's level of prophecy. His level of prophecy is very different from the way other prophets, including yourselves, prophesy. And one of the ways that Hashem was communicating that to them is by saying, Temunat Hashem yabit. He sees the real Temunah of God, whereas other prophets do not see the real Temunah of God. And the Rambam therefore codifies this in Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, where he talks about the difference between Mosaic prophecy and the prophecy of other prophets. And this is in Rambam Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, the 7th chapter, and Halacha Vav. All the things herein, and this is in source number 3 in the handout, all of the things herein spoken is the path of prophecy for all prophets, first and last, except for Moses, our master, who was the master of all prophets. And here the Rambam details the way that Moshe prophesied differently from other prophets. The first and well-known difference is that other prophets could only prophesy while their physical senses were at rest, meaning while they were asleep. They were unconscious, and they had prophecy in an unconscious state. Whereas Moshe Rabbeinu was capable of having a prophecy while in an awake state, both while his physical senses were engaged with the physical world, he could still have a prophecy and engage in the spiritual realm at the same time, which was, again, unique, sui generis, never happened before, never happened after. And then he says that another difference is that other prophets receive their prophecy through an intermediary, an angel, some kind of go-between between God and the prophet. But Moshe Rabbeinu has no intermediary. And so like Chazal say that Moshe saw ba'aspaklaria hami'ira, that's Chazal's terminology. They say that Moshe had a clear lens vision of Hashem. And then you see the underlined portion of the text, which I underlined, and it is further said, and the Temunah of the Lord doth he behold, which is to say that there is no manner of parable, for he sees the matter in its clearness without riddle and without parable, which is, as the Torah testifies concerning him, even manifestly, and not in dark speeches, which is b'mar'ah v'lo b'chidot, that Moshe can see very clearly through a very clear pane of glass, and not with riddles. He does not prophesy in dark speech, but by sight, for he sees the matter in its clearness. Very similar to what the Rambam is saying here.
So that passage where Moshe wants to see God and he's put in a cleft.
Very good. I'm getting there. I'm going in that direction, Miriam. You're going in the right path. So let me just point this out, that there is an inherent, and what Miriam is just raising is an inherent contradiction in the way that Moshe's prophecy is described. Because on the one hand, the Rambam, both here and in Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, describes him as having absolute clarity of the truth of God. But if we look at the text of the Torah, we also see a little bit of hedging our bets over there. Because first, God, when Moshe says, Hareini na et kavodecha, in Parshat Ki Tisa, Moshe says, show me your glory. Show me your real essence, Hashem. And Hashem says, I'm going to put you in the cleft of the rock and I'll pass over you, but ufanai lo yera'u. But you cannot, no human being is capable of seeing my true face. Implying that you don't see. Well, you could say that's an anthropomorphism, which is what the Rambam would say. But the difficulty is that on the one hand, from this passage and from other passages in the Torah says, panim el panim. God speaks to Moshe face to face. And there is an absolute clarity, b'mar'ah v'lo b'chidot, with clear vision, without an intermediary, and without any darkness or riddles. And like the Rambam says, the true essence, the Temunah of God. And yet, the Torah also seems to be implying that no human being is capable of that. So how do we reconcile that? The problem is also inherent in the Rambam, because when we get to the 37th chapter of Moreh Nevukhim in the first book, the Rambam says the very same thing that the Torah says, that no human being is capable of ascertaining the truth of God's essence. So he directly contradicts himself. And the Abarbanel picks up on this, and he says, if you want to get a classic example of what the Rambam meant in his introduction when he said, I'm going to be contradicting myself, don't think I don't know what I'm doing, I totally know what I'm doing. And if you find any contradictions, it's because I'm setting you up to work it through, right? This is an example of that. Where here the Rambam says that Temunah means you get it totally and see the essence of the thing. And later on, the Rambam is going to say that no human being, including Moshe, was capable of that. So I wanted to show you a passage from the Malbim, and with this we're going to conclude. You have to say that what the Rambam means is that Moshe Rabbeinu's apprehension of God was higher than any other human being that ever lived or ever will live. It was with a clarity of vision that can be called a Temunah. However, even the word Temunah is not the actual essence of God, but only a representation of Him that human beings are capable of grasping. But it is the highest representation of God that a human being is capable of grasping. And so if you take a look at the Malbim, it's part of a much longer commentary. The Malbim over here says it's in Sefer Shemot in the 20th chapter in his commentary on the Ten Commandments. The Malbim writes as follows: U'temunah ein hatzura boletet rak shokaat. When the word Temunah is used by the Torah, now the Rambam does not say this, but the Malbim makes reference to the Rambam shortly. He says when the word Temunah is used in the Torah, it refers to an illustration or an image of something that is sunken into the surface of whatever surface you're looking at. But it's not a protruding representation, it is a sunken representation, a concave representation, not a convex representation. What do we mean by that? So let's take a look. Lemashal, to illustrate. Im mashkia tzura boletet b'sha'ava shena'aseh bo tzura shokat. Let's say I take, people would have on their rings, they would have the family crest. And what they would do with it, it would be a three-dimensional figure or kind of sculpture, little mini sculpture. And then you would take hot heated wax, put it into the wax, and you would create a sunken image of the protruding image that is in the ring.
Taba'at HaMelech.
Taba'at HaMelech, Chotam HaMelech, exactly. Okay, Uve'inyan ze amar Temunah leneged einai. And that's what the word Temunah is descriptive of. Shelo ra'at tzura boletet mamashit, rakoach dimyoni tziyer lo tzura. So it's not the actual representation of what the essence of the thing is, but it's by comparison the difference between the sculpture that's on the ring versus the imprint that is made in the wax. Ki'ilu min hadavar ruchani nishka b'dimyonot tzura shekibel v'nishka bo min hadavar haruchani. So when we speak in spiritual terminology, in spiritual things, when we use the word Temunah, the only thing that we're capable of grasping in the physical world is the imprint of the spiritual essence that leaves an imprint in the physical confines of man's mind. V'chein ma shekasav u'smunas Hashem yabit. And that's what the Torah means when it says that Moshe could see the Temunah of Hashem. Shetziyer kol hamitziut shebo nishka v'nechkak tzurat hachochma ha'elyona. That Moshe Rabbeinu was capable of illustrating the very essence of God's intellect, but only as an imprint, not as the essence of the thing. V'chein tziru chachmei ha'amet b'sod hatzimtzum. And that's how Kabbalists explain what the concept of tzimtzum is. This idea of God reducing himself in order to make room for a physical world. Ki'ilu b'chalal hatzimtzum nechkak tzurat hachochma shel Ein Sof b'tzura shokat. God is known as Ein Sof. He is infinite in his essence. And therefore, how is his presence detectable in a finite world? It is by analogy, God leaving his imprint, not his true essence, but his imprint that is created by a vacuum of his essence. Va'amar yabit shahahabata moreh al iyun haseichel. And that's why it says that Moshe would be mabit at the Temunah. It doesn't say yir'eh utmanat Hashem yir'eh. It doesn't say that he sees with his eyes the Temunah of Hashem, but rather yabit. And to be mabit at something is to have an intellectual cognition of that imprint. Sheba hamitziut ya'ayin v'yakir darchei ha'chochma nisgevet, aval birot ha'ayin ein shem Temunah. He says you don't use the word Temunah in this definition with the verb ro'eh, you use it with the verb yabit. Shalzeh amar ki lo ri'item kol Temunah. And that's why it says you never saw a Temunah of God, because God's Temunah cannot be seen, it can only be cognized in the mind. And then he says, V'ayin b'moreh nevukhim, chelek aleph, perek gimel, uperek dal. So the Malbim himself acknowledges that what he's doing is sort of moving forward the explanation of the Rambam. Okay, I think this is a good place to hold it. Any questions or comments? Nothing. Okay. We'll continue with.
Can I
yes.
So earlier, did we not say that Rambam said that the greatest thing is for us to know God, to imitate God, to understand God's intellect? Like there's that element that we need. That's what we're trying to.
Right. Ultimately, the goal of man is to make his intellect as unified with God's intellect as possible.
And Moshe was as close to that as possible for a human being.
Right.
So to what extent did Moshe go beyond teaching us the giver of the law, which is it's not about essences, it's about very practical things, shatnez, kashrut, and things like that. And to what extent did he say, I am the greatest master of this, let me disseminate it amongst the people? Because I don't think you see that in the text. You see him as the lawgiver, not the giver of philosophy. And
correct. It's a very interesting point. First of all, it's important to know that the reason why Moshe had this higher level of prophecy was only for one purpose, because he had to be the giver of the law. If Moshe had not been the giver of the law, as great as he was, he would not have achieved the prophecy any greater than Avram, Yitzchak, or Yaakov. But it was specifically because the giver of the law needs to clearly understand the words of God without any personal intermingling of his own mental capacity. It's got to be, he has to view himself as a clear filter that just presents Hashem's information. So it's for that reason that he has this clear clarity of prophecy, unlike any other prophet. The second point is, and that we'll talk, maybe this is not the time, but people who are prophets are sent on specific tasks or missions. Moshe knew what his task was, and the fact that he was able to apprehend far more than he communicated is very typical of prophets. Prophets do not share everything that they cognize. That's not their function. And so I'm going to hold that idea here, and this will be an opportunity for us to talk about it further some later date. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You say something about the purpose of the law.